Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahma Vidparam. Okay, so we are in Narada Bhakti Sutra, and last time we finished off in chapter 2, section 2. We began that, we finished the previous one, the previous section, and now we began chapter 2, section 2. And so sometimes the acharyas say that knowledge alone can lead to devotion. That first we have to know. We have to know about something, then our love grows. So we say things like, I need to get to know you. I need to meet this person. I need to learn more about this. And only when we start to know, then love grows. This is now in Sutra 28. But then some say, no, bhakti or devotion is not like that. Bhakti is anyonyashrayatvam, means it's both. So maybe first, let's say the example I gave last time, you hear a song and you love it, you really like it. So then you want to know more about the song and the singer. And once you know more, then you love more because we find out such great things about the people. And once we love more, then we want to know even more. So sometimes bhakti is mutually dependent. Well, it's not just we know, but sometimes in the first instance, we also love and we cherish. Then some acharyas said, no, and these are the Sanat Kumaras in Sutra 30, they said bhakti is its own fruit. Don't even think about knowing and loving, this and that. You just love. You just love. So now today we're going to see an example that he gives in the sutra. So Sutra 31. Rajagriha bhojanadishu tathaiva drishtatvat. So he gives an example here of Raja. Raja means king. Okay. Graha means home. Bhojana means dinner. Adishu, etc. Tatheva, in the same manner. Drishtatvat means it's demonstrated. So it's demonstrated in the same manner in this example of the king, his house, his royal palace, and dinner. So the example here is how devotion finds its fulfillment. So the first part is, let us say there's a king or a queen of the town, and we want to gain the favor of the king. And we want something from the king. So many times there are people in political power and we want to get to know them because we need a favor or two. And so if we take the first part of just knowing the king, let's say we get to know the king, we know his background, we know his history, we know all his responsibilities, his day-to-day affairs. Will we really get favor of the king just by knowing him? So a second element of service has to come in, which is also an expression of love. So we've just sort of served the king, see what he needs, see how we can help, see what we can give him, see, what his timings are, what are the things that he would like, what are the things that he doesn't like. So we also have to serve the king. So it's not only just knowing, but it's also serving, loving. If we just know and don't serve, we just get to know somebody and we don't serve, devotion is not fulfilled. And at the same time, if we just serve without knowing what they need, so many times we like to do so many things for so many people, but we don't even know what they need. Devotion's not fulfilled. Devotion becomes fulfilled in the third step, wherein we know the king and we serve the king, and we know and we serve so much so that we forget why we even came. We forget why we even came. We forget that we're even seeking favor of the king. It is this love that has no reason. That's called devotion. When we lose the sense of why we were there the first place, we're not knowing or serving to gain anything out of it, of that particular relationship, but we're doing it just because. So in the same way with family, with friends, you know, how is the relationship? First, we know them. We know what they like, they don't like, we know their background, we know, their family history, all of that we get to know. And then we also serve them. So it's not only just knowing, but also serving. Find ways to be helpful, find ways to be able to help them on their path. And sometimes what happens with family and friends is we count, no? I did this much for you, but you didn't do this much for me. So today I did 5 things for you, but you only did 3 things for me. Or, I did so many things for you, but what did you do for me? Right? And sometimes we keep tabs. That is a very superficial kind of love. This higher love that we talk about is when we know somebody and we love them, we serve them, so much so that we forget what we even did. There's a beautiful saying that one must forget the good that they've done to others. One must forget it. When I was in Bal Vihar, our teacher said that to us, and I was like, why would you forget? Wouldn't it make you feel so good that you did so many good deeds to other people? And normally when you're growing up, you get stars. This is all the good things that you did. So one is that it increases our ego. We feel like, oh, we've done this and we've done that and we've done this. And we love things that fan our ego. So whenever we have to create a portfolio or a resume or LinkedIn account or things like that, we feel so good about ourselves because so many things we did, right? But in this path of bhakti and also jnana, we forget the good that we've done. Because first of all, we haven't done it. Second of all, when we're keeping tab of the good things that we've done, that means our life is quite sad because we have nothing else to do. Why would our mind go towards what good things I did? Why won't it go towards Bhagavan? Why don't it go towards the truth? How low and how superficial is my mind that I have to keep a tab of all the good things that I did for others? That mind is very superficial. And the third point is that for a realized being, goodness is so natural. So, for a realized being, they cannot count. They've lost count. How can we ask Gurudev how many good things you've done in your life? Every breath is a teaching. Every step is a blessing. So for truly realized beings, there is no count, because every single act includes goodness, right? And they also don't even remember. They don't remember. They don't remember that, yes, they did this, yes, they did that. They don't remember because it becomes so natural. So these Mahatmas are truly drenched in devotion. When we study the scriptures, we get knowledge. But when we study the lives of saints and sages, we get knowledge drenched in love. That is the slight difference there. Because when we study the Upanishads, there is no doubt that we will get knowledge. But when we want to see that knowledge personified, how will that knowledge walk, look, talk? Then we study the lives of saints and sages. And we study also Bhakti Shastra. So that's the first example, the Raja Griha, the palace and the king. The next example is Bhojana. Bhojana, dinner, or dinner, lunch, a meal, any meal. Same thing. So there's one way where we know how to cook. We know what to make, right? We know what to make. We know how to cook. We got all the ingredients. We saw the recipe. We chopped everything. Okay. But if we just did that without understanding who are we serving, what are the things that they like? What are the things that they're able to eat? What will they enjoy? What will help them in their daily routine? If we just know the background of cooking without understanding who we're serving and what we're doing it for, then it's not complete. And also, if we just go on cooking and cooking and cooking without knowing how to cook, then it's also a problem. If we just say we're going to put something together or whip it together, and then we don't know. But we don't know what's going to come out, right? So even this bhojana, this cooking, what is the fulfillment of cooking? Is that we know how to cook. We know who we're cooking for, who we're serving, and we forget ourselves in the very act. We're not seeking to gain appreciation, seeking recognition. Just in the fullness of everybody, we're absolutely full, and that's more than enough. This thing doesn't count that this person didn't like it or liked it or this or that. When we truly cook a meal with true devotion, that question doesn't even arise because we give our heart and soul to it. So here in these examples, what we see is bhakti, true devotion, is not just knowing, and it's not just serving. It's the knowing with the serving and with the forgetting that I ever did it. That is called bhakti. And now we'll go to the next sutra, Sutra 32. Natena rajaparitoshaha kshudha shantirva. So here, natena, so not by mere knowledge, rajaparitoshaha, the favor of the king, kshudha shantirva, the appeasement of hunger happens. So as we saw, those two sets of examples, right? The palace of the king, and the hunger, not just by knowing that there's appeasement. It has to be all three: the knowing, the serving, loving, and forgetting ourselves in that very act. If we want to put, all three together, sometimes, let's say there's one example that the king sent an invite to go meet him. And in your mind, maybe you had that, okay, you want to ask this from the king, maybe it's there in your mind. But the minute you get there, you forget everything. Forget what is there to ask. You forget that you're even going to be fed. You forget that anything's going to happen. You just get so immersed in that you lose yourself. So that's also bhakti. Sometimes when we meet a Mahatma or a wise being, or when we sit with Bhagwan, we forget everything. So that is devotion. Then Sutra 33 says, Tasmat saiva grahya mumukshubhihi. Tasmat saiva grahya mumukshubhihi. Tasmat, therefore, sa, that supreme love for God, eva, alone, grahya, is to be sought after, mumukshubhihi, by the seekers of complete liberation. So those who want to become very, very firm in knowledge, deeply rooted in knowledge, then seek devotion, because it will help, it will decorate, it will mold that knowledge. There was one, Gora Kumbar, and he was a potter. And whenever he was making his pot, he felt like he was being molded. Because when you see clay, it's very hard. No, clay is very hard. So when the water comes in the clay, then it becomes soft. So he felt like the water is the name of Vitthala, one form of Sri Krishna. He felt like the water is Vitthala. And as he's forming the clay in the wheel, it's expanding. So he felt like the wheel is like Vitthala, because when we have devotion, what happens is we expand. And as the clay expands, it gets shaped into something so beautiful. So he also felt that due to his relationship and due to his practice of making a pot, his personality, his mind also gets shaped and formed. And so through his process of making a pot, he felt his whole mind being molded. So this is something that every mumukshu should seek for. It is true that we are not the mind, very, very true. But to be able to be in that, understand that, realize that, then we need a beautiful mind to go beyond the mind. So now it is in this context that Gurudev said that a true devotee must have the courage of Prahlada, the conviction of Dhruva, the heroism of Sudama, the depth of Shabari, and the perseverance of Gopis, the ardor of Radha, and the faith of Kunti. So today we will, I've asked you to prepare. So first let's have the courage of Prahlada.
There you go. I didn't get a chance to prepare anything except to speak, but I was reading and thinking about the story of Prahlada, and I was reminded of one particular story that I think I did when I was a Balavihar teacher. I wrote a play about it, so our class performed this play, and to me it signifies the courage that Prahlada expresses in his devotion to Bhagavan, to Narayana. And so the background is that Prahlada is a demon. His father Hiranyakashipu is the king of the demons, and Prahlada himself is a demon. But just due to the circumstances of his birth, he was in the womb exposed to Narada, exposed to the Narayana mantra that Narada is always chanting Narayana, Narayana, and telling stories about Narayana. And so he was born with just a belief in Narayana. And from a very, very young age was just, telling the stories and reveling in the glory of Narayana. And that, he would, even in school, in the Gurukula, he would tell his fellow classmates, don't, put your faith in Narayana, and don't put your faith in the, in the king. The king is, the demon, but the king is a king. That Narayana is God, and the king, his father, got extremely upset and tries to kill him. And there have been movies made. There have been stories told of the, just the various creative ways of how this demon king, with the unlimited resources and magic and and connections to all other powers and demons who have powers, the various creative ways that they try to kill Prahlada because of his insolence. But Prahlada survives all of them because of his by just chanting Narayana, just praying to Narayana. Narayana always finds a way to bless him and protect him. And so no matter what trial he's enduring, he is praying to Narayana, and Narayana is protecting him. And one particular instance of that is the Hiranyakashipu's sister, whose name is Holika, has the power to survive fire, to survive getting burnt. And so they decide that what they'll do is that she will sit with Prahlada and play with Prahlada, and he'll be they'll be near each other, and then they'll start a fire. And in that fire, the Holika can hold Prahlada in place, and Prahlada will burn to death, and Holika will be unharmed. And so that that's the plan. The plan is hatched, and they go to execute it. And Prahlada, it's his own. He's hanging out, no worries, and thinking about Narayana, praying to Narayana. And so they're playing, and then the fire starts, and Holika's holding in place. And Prahlada has the full faith in Lord Narayana, that Lord Narayana will protect him, and is praying. And what Narayana does is flip the power and gives Holika's power to Prahlada instead. And so Holika is the one who then catches fire and explodes into a burst of dazzling colors. And so that's how Prahlada in his faith to Narayana has the courage to sit still even in the flames, and to be knowing that he'll be protected by God. And of course, the significance of that story is that that's the origin of the holiday of Holi. That explosion of Holika in colors is what's celebrated. And what's interesting, about the story to me, and learning about the story, is that obviously the conclusion of the story of Prahlada ends with Narasimha coming out of the pillar and killing Hiranyakashipu. But this, so like I spent a lot of time, just thinking about how that the story that I'm highlighting, which is not the conclusion, of the story, it's just like a side story in the overall Prahlada story. Why is like a major Indian holiday that's still celebrated today, very popularly, from a side story of a Purana? And the history of Hinduism and the belief in Lord Narayana, like the way that we today, the most popular avatars of Vishnu are Rama and Krishna, that historically, for a long time period, the most popular forms were Narasimha and Varaha. And there are many temples, ancient temples today, that are focused on Narasimha, Varaha, Narasimha in various forms. And even if you go to many Vishnu temples, you'll see statues, idols of them. And so that I was thinking about that the story of Prahlada is like the premier example, that if I'm praying to Narasimha primarily, if that's my family and my community, and like that's the God that so many people around me are praying to, that Prahlada is not just like one story, but he is the epitome of a bhakta. That's the one person that we would look at, the primary story we would try to learn from, and that courage to get through life, that any trial that life puts in front of us, that just the prayers to Lord Narayana will protect us. So that's my reflection.
Thank you. Very nice. Okay, let's have the conviction of Dhruva.
Hari Om, everyone. So the conviction of Dhruva is told really beautifully in Srimad Bhagavatam. And actually, I'll post a link after this. There's a Swami Swatmananda from Chinmay Mission, Mumbai, or maybe he was giving a discourse there. It's posted on YouTube with the deeper significance. So really lot to unpack. But if we think about the broader story, this is also involves the story of a king Uttanapada, with two wives, Suniti and Suruchi. And with these two wives, his son with Suniti is Dhruva, and his son with Suruchi is Uttam. And it's interesting because there's clearly a differentiation in the way he treats both the wives and the sons. So much so that there is one day where Dhruva comes out and he sees his brother or half brother, Uttam, sitting in his dad's lap. And he wants to sit on the other leg, as you do when you're 5 years old and you see your dad there being affectionate with a brother of yours. But instead of being allowed to sit on his lap, Suruchi essentially says, no, you cannot do that. What you must do is, if you pray to Lord Narayana and say that, in your next life, if you're born from my womb, that's when you can sit on your dad's lap. Because she says this very harshly in a way that says as if he doesn't even deserve to sit on the king's lap, even though he is his father. And she says it quite directly, go to the forest and pray to the Lord. And he's pretty hurt. He's a little kid, he's really hurt. And he goes to his mother, Suniti. And this is actually a really beautiful part of the story because, this could have easily turned into, a dramatic moment, where it turns into, it's really harsh. Of course, it requires some consoling. But Suniti actually has such pure devotion and viveka. And it's said that she actually, when thinking about it through the role of a mother and a son, instead of giving her son the likes and dislikes, the raga dvesha, that could have come when thinking about the other mother and what she said very hurtfully, she instead looks at the bigger vision as a sadhaka and tells him, you know what? You should go to the forest and seek the Lord. And she's like, he is your true father. Yes, there's this king. Yes, he was really unkind and he is your father, but the broader Lord, the Lord will be there for you unconditionally. And it's interesting in this exact moment to think about the symbolism that Swamiji indicates of how actually, in this story, Dhruva wants to sit on his dad's lap and the dad does not let him. But in reality, if we think about it, the Lord wants us to sit in his lap, but we are unwilling. I think that's really beautiful to think about. We're over here so distracted in samsara are not willing to fully surrender. And here we see the reverse in the story. And I think when we think about it, this started out when talking about the conviction of Dhruva. Really, he takes his mother's words to heart and he goes. And he goes to the forest and again, he's 5 years old. When you're 5, you're pretty small. Think of that age that little kids are when they go to kindergarten. Usually, it could have easily led to, don't worry, beta, you can stay at home, or like, it'll be okay. But instead, she had the courage to agree and say, no, go seek the Lord in the forest. So he went, this little kid, and with a pure heart, devotion, and tapas, was searching for the Lord. And I think the distinction to make here when thinking about this conviction is he wasn't looking for the Lord to gain something in return, right? It wasn't to say, I want to take revenge. It wasn't to say, make my father love me. It was literally purely there to say, I want to get the Lord's darshan. I want to get Lord Narayana's darshan. And I think what's interesting here, this actually scared people. It scared several, the devas, and he was even tested by Narada Muni, who came and said, you're a little boy. You're 5 years old. Like, what you should be doing right now, you should be playing, you should enjoy and live the life that I'm sure many of us lived when we were 5 years old. And in a similar way, he said, yes, this happened, but it was your karmas and this is your actions. So just go respect your elders and go back home. And in some ways, he could have easily just said, oh yeah, I guess you are giving me permission. Let me just go back home to the comforts of the palace compared to the harshness of the forest. But instead, this is, I think, where when we think about even what the word Dhruva means, when thinking about that conviction and that resoluteness of that spirit of that little 5-year-old boy, he stands his ground. Dhruva, in many ways, actually tells Sage Narada, he says, here you talk about how this path is so hard and, getting the darshan of the Lord takes years and years, immense effort, and many don't even receive it. But I want that. Tell me how to get that. And he continues on. And in many ways, thinking about it, it went from, Narada Muni being kind of testing him and dissuading him to all actually becoming his guru. And I think it's so interesting, ultimately, after much penance and on his journey as a sadhaka with that single pointed focus and having that viveka, ultimately he does get that darshan of Lord Vishnu and that Vishwarupa. And I think, when reflecting on this story, there's something to be said for, I was thinking about how this is the story of someone who's so young, who could have all the comforts in the world, and who could have taken an easier path. But for two reasons, it didn't happen. One, I think it's thinking about the role of his mother, Suniti. So the role of a parent on a child and how deeply held those convictions are, and the way that passed through to him, purely seeking the Lord and seeking his original or absolute father. And two, I think it's about having that, mumukshutva, or like that burning desire for liberation. Like Dhruva knew what his goal was. He had that single pointed focus and devotion for the Lord. And regardless of the obstacles and tests that were put in his way, he wasn't going to give up. It almost reminds me of the story of Hanuman, going to Sanjeevani and having all the demons coming up along the way. And each of these type of stories, I think it just demonstrates that even for ourselves as seekers, there are going to be the same obstacles, and whether it's lack of concentration or the world of samsara or other things that, may take us off astray. But even more than it taking us off astray, I think it's about our conviction, our resolution to come back to the path, or how we can grow to the point where we say, hey, this might have happened, but this can be a bump in the road and I can be on the path or stay on the path, rather than viewing it as, hey, you know what, now I'm just going to go on a completely different turn altogether. So, it's a really beautiful story. I think, Dhruva, the conviction of Dhruva, and ultimately like seeing the Lord from such a painful moment, a start where you're rejected by your dad, and ultimately having the vision and openness and large-heartedness to seek the Lord. Lot to learn from that. So that's my reflection on Dhruva. How are you?
Okay, very nice. Okay, we have heroism of Sudama.
Hari Om, everyone. So the heroism of Sudama can best be shown by talking about his friendship with Lord Krishna. So Sudama was a very noble and honest man, and he was very devoted to the Lord. Because of past karmas, him and his family were very poor, and in order to clothe his children, he would have to wear very, very old clothes. Sometimes him and his family didn't even have food in the house, so they were in a lot of poverty. And so one day, Sudama's wife very kindly approached Sudama and asked about Sudama's childhood friend Krishna. She had heard that Lord Krishna was the prince of Dwarka, and he was very kind, and she thought that he could help him out. And because of how much poverty they were in, she constantly urged Sudama to go and ask for the help of his childhood friend Krishna. And so eventually, after she asked a couple of times, Sudama went to go and ask Krishna for help. And before he left, she told him that he couldn't go empty-handed to his friend. So she wrapped a couple grains of poha in a rag to take for Krishna. And while Sudama was walking to Dwarka to see Krishna, he was worried that Krishna might not recognize him or even invite him in. He was kind of battling these feelings back and forth between, he knew that him and Krishna were really good friends when they were little, and he knew that Krishna loved him and he loved Krishna, but he was ashamed of being poor and being scared that he wouldn't recognize him. And so that's kind of what he was facing along the way, but he convinced himself that, Krishna is my friend. We experienced so many things when we were younger together. He loves me. He will recognize me. And so finally, when he approached the palace gates, he tells the guards that he knows Lord Krishna and his name is Sudama. And immediately the guards go and tell this to Lord Krishna. And as soon as Lord Krishna hears Sudama's name, he comes running to the gates, and he's just overjoyed and in tears that Sudama, like his childhood friend, is here. And he and he greets him with like so much love and friendship immediately. And Lord Krishna washes his feet. He feeds him with royal grand meals and praises him. And everyone in the palace is like, wow, like our prince is like praising someone. He must be so important. And Krishna asks if Sudama has forgotten him since he has not visited in so long. As they're eating and talking, Krishna asks if Sudama has brought anything for him. And Sudama again is still feeling like kind of embarrassed for being poor. And he's like, oh, I'm eating these like grand meals. I can't take out like this rag with like half cooked poha in it. Like he's feeling embarrassed. And Krishna notices the rag and takes the poha immediately and tries 2 bites of it. And he's just so joyous that Sudama and his wife had thought of Lord Krishna all along and brought him something. And they're just kind of like rejoicing and they're so happy. And Sudama eventually leaves the palace. And as he's leaving, he realizes he's totally forgotten to ask about the help that he originally came for. His wife asked him to like ask Krishna for help because they're going through a lot of poverty. And then he kind of like reflects and he's like, oh, the friendship and love that Krishna gave me is more than enough. I don't need all that wealth and I don't need to even ask for it. My friendship and love for him is enough. And so he goes back to his village to tell his wife that. And as he's like walking up to his house, he realizes that suddenly his house is a mansion, and his kids are like nicely clothed and they have new books, and his wife is covered in jewels. And that's when he realizes like that like the Lord will like, you don't even have to ask for anything. Like the Lord will give you like a millionfold what you offer to him. And that like, and even after they got all the jewels and the like the mansion and everything, Sudama and his family continued to live as simply as possible and always kept like Krishna's name in everything in their daily lives, and never forgot and never became like prideful of what they gave him.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you. Okay. The depth of Shabari. So I don't think we have that today. Perseverance of gopis.
Hari Om. So as we might know, gopis are the ultimate devotees of Bhagwan Krishna. In Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a beautiful song that the gopis actually sing to Krishna, which is the Gopi Gita. But the context is that, the story goes that they were very much moved by his music. So they leave their household, leave their responsibilities, and go to Vrindavan to be with Bhagwan Krishna. And all they want, their full desire, their attention, every thought, every action is simply to attain his feet. So to surrender at his feet. And they're so much enjoying his presence. And it's just at that moment where Bhagwan Krishna suddenly disappears. And so then the Gopi Gita is actually their aching song of this separation. It's 19 verses. So I've just I'll highlight some of the translations that really spoke to me. The first verse talks about how Bhagwan Krishna, you are our breath. So you're the one that gives us life. And we're drowning. It's almost this feeling of we're drowning without Bhagwan there. Then in verse 2 and 3, they talk about we are your dasikas, so your unbought servants. Our life is fully to you, dedicated to you. And you are our protector, but now for some reason you're killing us. And the language is at least in the translation, it's pretty strong. They say things like that, like, you're killing us. Why are you torturing us by not being here with us? And then they go on to say, you are the self in everything, the spirit that's in me, but also in everything all around us and in the whole world. Then they say they want, they're at his feet. We love your feet. We are prostrated at your feet, but where is your hand? We'd like you also to bless us. Where are you when we're seeking you with so much love and devotion? And then they go into a couple of verses that talk about Bhagwan Krishna's rupa, so different parts of his form. They ask for Bhagwan's smile. They say, even with your smile, sometimes you're able to destroy bad tendencies in others. But to us, your smile is like this nectar, because we love you so much. It's so sweet to us. Then they highlight his feet again, saying, those who prostrate at your feet, their ego is erased, is taken away. Your lips, your mouth, your music, everything is just sweetness to us. And even the stories of you will placate those who suffer. And in that way, even those who are teaching or sharing the glories of Bhagwan Krishna are givers of gifts, and those that are listening to those same stories are also receiving a gift. Then they go on to talk about the beauty of his laughter, that his play, this laughing, and even the play that he's created for them, for everyone, is what leads to egolessness. And then they go on to say, we feel we are the wives of you, and without you there, we're totally confused. Our minds are agitated, and our minds are gone. And they mention that anyone that comes into contact with Bhagwan Krishna is bhagya, or fortunate, and this whole world is actually fortunate, because Bhagwan, you've walked all over the world and created this world for us. They then talk about how jealous they are of his flute, because his flute touches his lips. And I think that one especially was super beautiful, because of course we talk sometimes about the metaphor of how we're all supposed to be instruments for Bhagwan, and they go to say those that are like his flute, they let go of all their likes and attachments, and so that's why we're so jealous of your flute. We would like to also be your flute. The next one is also kind of funny. They go to curse Bhagwan Brahma, saying, curse the fact that we have eyelids, because every time we blink, we can't see you, Bhagwan Krishna, and we just want, it feels like eternity. Every time it's like a whole yuga, anytime we can't see you or see you, literally have your vision before us. Then they mentioned, we've given up everything, our relationship to our husband, our kids, our parents. We've done all of that sacrifice. Then even so, why have you left us? Your laughter, your smile, it causes us to feel desire and love. You are the medicine giver or the doctor, and we are suffering from illness. So please stop withholding the medicine that you have and just heal us. And they finish by saying, we burn without you. And so this whole song, it talks about this idea of separation, but coming from a place of just intense devotion. And I think similar to how others have shared, it really highlights mumukshutvam, this idea like the love for Bhagwan is so strong that they just want to end that separation and be one with him. And so I thought it was really beautiful, all the different analogies that they used, how they just feel this intense desire that even though they love him so much, there's still something more. I think that indicates that wanting of oneness at the end.
Thank you. Very good. Okay, let's have the order of Radha.
Out of all the gopis, Radha is the most beloved gopi. So in Bhakti Shastra, it is said that if Krishna is Shaktiman, then Radha is the Shakti. So that's how they are inseparable. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives examples like, how can you separate milk from its whiteness? How can you separate sugar from its sweetness? it's almost impossible to separate these two. And these are the examples for Radha. So that is how Radha is described by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is considered to be a form of Radha, an avatar of Radha that has come down. So it's very similar to like in another verse it says that like water, jal, pani, they are all different names, but they are referring to the same tattva. Similarly, Radha and Krishna are just two names which are referring to the same reality, same truth. So that's how inseparable they are. But the Leela is such great Leelas of Krishna Bhavan that even though they are inseparable, they are separated. Radha and Krishna are separated, but that is also part of the Leela in which Krishna wants, and both Radha and Krishna feel like find happiness, greatest bliss when they are separated, because the bliss of again meeting when they are separated is much higher than always being together. So that's how a separation also has its bliss in itself. And in Bhakti Shastra, it says that Viyoga is much more valuable than Sahayog, because in Viyog, when you are in Sahayog, you see God only in one place where the God is present. But in Viyog, you are finding God and you are looking for God and searching it in every corner and in every karn. So that's how your entire mind is filled with God in that sense. So that's how that's how the Leela of Radha and Krishna is, although they are inseparable, they are still separated. So it's very, it doesn't cover, like our intellect cannot capture that kind of love. Another thing which was pretty part of the, like I was seeing some content on what I can say about Radha. So sometimes we say that Radha's name was not there in Srimad Bhagavatam, but it's said that Shukdev ji was narrating Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit, and he had to do it in 7 days. And whenever he would take name of Radha, he would go into samadhi, and he wouldn't be able to say that the entire Bhagavatam to Parikshit. So that is why he indirectly refers to Radha in many places, like the one of the most beloved gopis. In those words, Radha has been referred to, and also in Vedas, in some shlokas, the Radha's mention is there. So from the veracity point of view, also Radha is part of, because some do question that. There is a story about Radha and Krishna where Krishna once sees Radha sleeping, and when he goes near Radha, she always hears Krishna always hears that Shyam from each and every cell of the body of Radha. So he goes into samadhi. Krishna goes into samadhi. So when Radha comes out of samadhi, she hears every cell of Krishna saying Radhe Radhe. Then she goes into samadhi. So this happens back and forth multiple times. So that we can see like how much there is a oneness in them. Even though they seem to be separate, they are one. So one nice thing was, so as Sapna mentioned, right? Every act of gopi was for the happiness or for the bliss of Krishna. So Radha's bliss was in Krishna's bliss. So Krishna used to wonder that what is the bliss that Radha experiences? Let me also see, because I cannot experience that right now. So he desires to be in the form of in the Radha Bhav, so that he can think about himself and then experience that bliss that Radha experiences. So that is how like he cannot do that in the divine realm. So he came down on the earth in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and to experience his own bliss in the Radha's form. So that is one of the beautiful ways Radha, like Krishna, experienced the bliss of Radha. it also says that the doors to Krishna is through Radha. So Radha is like the grace, because even in Advaita Vedanta we talk about like the grace. When there is a grace of God, then only that um, Ishva Anugraha Pumsa Advaita Vasana, that even with the grace itself, that Advaita Vasana will come. So even the doors to Krishna is through Radha. So, but the rest, so that's why we like we say that we have to be devoted to Radha. But Rasikas, like who are the same Bhakti saints, they consider Radha to be the utmost, even above Krishna, and the reason is because Krishna's bliss is in like in those devotees who are devoted to Radha. That's why they will be beloved to Krishna as well as to Radha if they are devoted to Radha. That is how Radha becomes much more beloved of the Bhakti saints, even much more beloved than Krishna. And there are like one or two stories related to how. So once there was a question, like there were Rukmani and Satyabhama and those like of Krishna who were wondering like why Krishna is so mad, like why gopis are considered to be higher than the other 16,000 wives or so. So in that Shri Krishna did a leela, and he said that I am having a lot of headache. So then it's an unbearable headache. So everybody was so worried, and he was at that time in Mathura. So everybody was so worried about that. So everybody was like asking, what can we do to remove that? So yeah, even like they did not get the answer. Then eventually Narad came, and Narad knew that it was all God's leela. So he asked Bhagwan Shri Krishna that, okay, you only have created this, so you only tell us the solution. What is it? So Bhagwan says that if you can bring me the dust of my greatest devotee, then I can and I'll apply it on my head, and I also like eat it, like put it in water and eat it. Then I can get rid of my headache. So nobody from the Mathura wanted to do that because they considered it to be the greatest sin, and if we do that, we'll go to hell. So we cannot do that. Like out of sheer respect for Sri Krishna, they did not agree. Nobody agreed. So then Narad went to Braj, and in where he told that this is the problem. So everybody, all the gopis, including Radha, and everybody came forward to give their the feet, the dust of their feet, saying that it doesn't matter if we go to hell or not, but there shouldn't be any inconvenience or any sadness to Krishna. So that's how selfless they were. Like they did not want moksha, they did not want anything. They just wanted that Sri Krishna always remains in bliss. That's the only thing that they wanted. So that is when they realize, oh, like how great these gopis are, that they didn't, like we generally even talk about Ishvara to be like one way to get mumukshutva or eventually that self-knowledge. But even in that case, they did not have that. So there is a shlok in, I think Bhagavad says, Swasukha Vasana Gandha Lesha Shanaya. That Swasukha Vasana, there is even not even trace of Swasukha Vasana in them. So that's how pure these gopis and Radha is. So I think that's where like when there was related to this about the knowledge and the bhakti, one Swamiji was asked like what is greater, bhakti or knowledge? So he said that definitely, like he was actually a Advaitin, so he said definitely bhakti, no question. So then that other person was confused, like he said why, like he was expecting that he will say knowledge is greater. So he said bhakti is greater. So he asked, then what about knowledge? So he said in knowledge there is no higher or lower. So that's, I think, a very beautiful. I think it's very similar to what Shankaracharya says when in the 12th chapter, when Shri Krishna asks which is higher, like worship with form or worship without form. So then Shri Krishna says worship with form is a higher. So in that, Shankaracharya ji writes the Bhashya that in Bhakti, you can talk about like higher and lower, but in Gnan, there is no higher, there is no lower. That's why Shri Krishna answered that.
Okay, thank you. Very nice. Okay, let's go to the faith of Kunti.
Hari Om. So Kunti is the mother of the Pandavas and also Lord Krishna's aunt. And Kunti is someone who expresses these qualities of love and humbleness, confidence and high morals throughout the exile, other troubles throughout the Mahabharata, and then also in the way that she has believed in her children and supported them, and also throughout the devotion towards Lord Krishna throughout the war and her life. And at the end of the war, Lord Krishna was about to board his chariot and head off. And as he passed Kunti, Kunti asked for one request. And Sri Krishna said, sure, anything. And Kunti requested simply, I want suffering, I want pain, I want more suffering, and I want more pain. So Lord Krishna was a bit surprised, and he was like, why would you want more of the suffering? You've already lost your husband. You had to face starvation and exile and deal with all of the worries that come with fearing the Kauravas and so many other troubles. And her response, and this is just a translation that I found, was, in all of my sufferings, whom did I think and pray? You. Every time you supported me, guided me. If there are no sufferings, will I think of you? I believe that suffering is the route to attain you. And this is something that I did not know this. And it's so beautiful. You can really capture Kunti's devotion in how she sees and remembers Lord Krishna throughout her struggles. It's so easy to think of God when things are going well and everything's lining up and we can sit back and say, God is good. But I think it's such more of a challenge to not only think of God in those moments of struggle, but have that complete faith. And when we do have that faith, as we see with the way that Kunti handled a lot of the troubles in the war, we're able to accept not only the lows with more grace, but also the highs. And it's been said that Kunti has been known to be very level-headed throughout the war in the way that she just responded to some of the fears with her sons, with the challenges of the war. And a lot of that has to do just with the faith that she had through those highs and not being too attached to them, but especially with the lows. And obviously, as she shares with just having that thought and that complete devotion, even in those darkest moments, that's where we can remember the Lord. So in displaying that bhakti, what is a better way to show love than to have that unconditional love, especially through those hardships?
Okay, very nice. Thank you. Okay, so we have seen now, right? We have seen the courage of Prahlada, the conviction of Dhruva, heroism of Sudama, the depth of Shabari, we will see next week, the perseverance of the gopis, the ardor of Radha, and the faith of Kunti. So the idea is that when we think about these bhaktas, when we start to reflect on their lives, then it kindles devotion in us. Today we'll stop here, but before we do that, I want to share with you a very beautiful composition that Surdas had about Sri Radha and Sri Krishna. Since we talked a lot about the gopis and Radha and Krishna, but one of the things that Surdashi loved to do was he loved to just imagine how would Sri Krishna and Radha speak to each other? What would they say to each other? And so I'll share this. I'll read the translation. Give me a second. Okay, so here. So Shri Krishna looks at the mirror in his hand and he asks Radha, between the two of us, whose face is better? So whose face is better? And Radha says, don't you see the obvious? My face is like the full moon and yours is like the dark night. Because they used to always say that Radha is very fair and Krishna is dark. But the idea is that both complement each other, because the moon cannot be seen without the night sky. And the night sky is also so vacant without the moon. So the idea is whatever it is, however she answers, it's always complimenting Shri Krishna, that she's always with Shri Krishna. So Radha says, your eyes are so beautiful, defined by black kajal. So he used to wear kohl in his eyes. But Radha said, but my eyes are pretty because your image is in my eyes. And she says, you lifted the Govardhan hill on your little fingernail. You know, Shri Krishna lifted that hill, that mountain. We all know that story. But she said, but I carry you, the lifter of that entire hill, that entire mountain in my heart. And so Suradasji says, I cannot forget this divine image of the two, the divine and devotee as one. So this is what we call bhakti, what all of you shared, how each and every one had a deep yearning for Bhagavan in their own ways. In their own ways, they had their own bhakti. They had their colors of bhakti. So we will stop here and then we will see more maybe next week.